Hello everyone, I'm Kibin Alleyne and today is Tuesday, August 13th. You are now watching Open, a program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. Last year, Foco introduced the Nueva Luz Study Center Commissioning Fund, commissioning 3 artists to create new work and explore historical context from a contemporary point of view. Managing Director Oscar Rivera and featured artist Shiloah Coley joins me to discuss this initiative. I want to thank you both so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're happy to be here.
Now, I want to learn a little bit more about Foco before we go more into the exhibit. Can you just tell us a little background about the organization and its overall mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So Foco was started in 1974 by a group of Puerto Rican photographers who were really pushing back against the limits to resources and exhibition opportunities that they had. And we've been doing the same thing since then, really focusing on promoting the efforts of artists of color.
Now, how did the Nueva Luz Study Center Commissioning Fund come into existence, and what was its primary goal for 2024?
Yeah, so the Commissioning Fund was an initiative that we launched alongside the launch of our Nueva Luz Study Center, which is a digital online resource where people can access our archives, the past issues of Nueva Luz, and a bunch of other archival materials for free on our website. Can you remind me what the second half of the question is?
Yeah, and what was its primary goal for 2024?
And for 2024, it was to activate our archives, let people know that there is a large community record of all of the artists that we've worked with that's accessible and that can be used as a catalyst for work that they want to do.
Now, I'm curious to know a little bit more about the title, because I think whenever we talk about art, the title definitely means something, and it's Nueva Luz. Can you tell me, what does that translate to, and what does it mean?
Yeah, so Nueva Luz means new light. It's kind of a pun because we're a photography organization. It's the name of our magazine that's been in production since 1985. And the show title, Open to Interpretation, is because the artists were tasked with responding to either an artwork, a theme, or an essay within the Nueva Luz archive to build their commission projects around. So reopening that conversation.
Now, Shiloah, can you tell me a little bit more about your role in this?
Yeah, I think, glory to God, I'm so grateful for the opportunity, and it's really been such a blessing to be able to work with Foco. And as one of the artists that was selected, it was the opportunity to really look at the archive and just build off of it as an artist and kind of use that as inspiration. So I was specifically looking at the work of Black women photographers in the 70s and 80s, and then I used that as an opportunity to also interview Black women who are lifelong New Yorkers and kind of have them look at the work from the archive that was specifically coming from photographers in the 70s and 80s and kind of connect their own lives and their personal stories to the work that was in the archive. So connecting the archive to present day.
That's amazing. And I want to talk about, there were two other artists that are also a part of this. Can you tell me a little bit more, just, behind what was the criteria or what, was expected of these artists and why they were chosen?
So there was another artist named Lisa Dubois, and then a collaborative pair, Regine Lays and Thiago Stremixiani. Lisa's project focused on documenting the waves of gentrification that Harlem has experienced, focusing specifically on Sugar Hill, where she grew up, and then coming outward. And Regine and Thiago focused on the sort of structure of our study center and some of the limitations that are currently existing. And they built this elaborate sort of installation, including mixed media drawings and reference materials, focusing on the key words that they found through their research through the study center.
And with that being said, Shiloah, I want to talk a little bit more about your process. How did you use identity? Because we are talking about people who have very unique experiences, whether that be in New York or just in this country in general. How did you use that to kind of help you with your work?
Yeah, I think that knowing Foco's mission and background, and then also just knowing they have such a rich archive of so many different artists and photographers of color that have come through New York and are also from across the country and from different places. I was really interested in honing in on, I think as a Black woman, I think about how Black women are photographed, how they're captured in images, what it means to be the subject, and then also to subvert that and what it means to be the photographer, right? And knowing that these Black women photographers were out there capturing really everyday life, but then also the experiences of Black women, Black communities in New York and outside of New York, I just thought it was a really beautiful opportunity to be able to look at the past and connect it to the present by speaking to women who are of different generations. I spoke to women who were in their 60s and also a woman who was in her 20s, and to hear how in present day they're able to connect their lives to what they see in the archive was just a really beautiful through line.
And kind of talking about that entire timeline, your work is digital. With that being said, there's so much going on in the digital space. How have you seen photography, especially, with Black women being the subject, evolved, over time?
Yeah, I think as someone who is not a photographer, but is like a large admirer of photographers, I think it's just beautiful to see people have control over their own narratives. You know what I mean? To see that relationship change from being the subject of work to like having control with the lens and the camera in your hand. It just changes the entire relationship and dynamic, and it gives people the power to be able to tell their own stories or to be able to share the stories of their communities. And I think that's exactly what Foco does with their archive by opening it up to people, is really like, these are the stories and the narratives that exist here, and like connecting it to present day and showing that there's still relevance, because so much of what we experience across time is cyclical, and and it's important for us to learn from each other and with each other.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, in what ways did the Nueva Luz Study Center Commissioning Fund aim to use historical themes as a catalyst for contemporary exploration?
Yeah, so just to kind of build off what Shiloah said, we're still facing a lot of the same battles. Artists are still struggling for equal rights and representation and all of the icky stuff that we protest all the time about. And the study center is in Foco's way of providing access to history. There's no financial bound, you're not bound by institutions. Anyone on the internet can access 50 years of our history and learn what's happened before and how to better prepare and shape what comes next. And that's been our driving mission, making sure that everyone has access to our archive so that we can share that information, because what's the use of preserving all of that information and documenting everything that's come before if only certain people have access to it and can learn from it?
And, I'm kind of thinking about this now, and I'd love to hear both of your ideas on this. But when we think of art, we don't often always think about history and how we're capturing history. Can you tell me just a little bit through your own experience, what you've noticed in that relationship between history and art or photographs and, what we consider archival? Kind of seeing this overlap is kind of interesting. So I'm curious to know, how did you both approach that?
Yeah. So photography is it's a science, but it's also a record of truth and time. And so when you are documenting things, there's this sort of quality of time passing, but timelessness that's built into the process. And so every time we put up an art show or there's an issue of the magazine, that contemporary moment is immortalized. And so you can always go back and think about what was happening in that time period, how the artists were moving, and what were the challenges they were facing. And I think that that's one of the more humanizing aspects of photography, is that that there's a person both in front of and behind the camera at all times, and their touch, their imprint is always going to be there, and you can learn from that.
Amazing. And I'm curious to hear, how you feel about that as well.
Yeah, to build off of that, I think you said that so well, Oscar, and I think that I'm often thinking about how art can kind of like open a door for us to see someone else's perspective, or even to empathize with someone and connect with people in a way that we might not anticipate. And I think that the relationship that like art and history have to each other, it's so essential, because I think art can help us better understand history. It humanizes it, right? It's one thing to like read it in a textbook, and we know that even when we're reading a textbook that there's certain narratives that we get, there's certain narratives that we hear, and art is so much more personal in a way. And I think that really allows us to be able to connect the past with the present.
That's amazing. And a lot of our textbooks have photographs,
and
they were, they were from people who probably view themselves, we say journalists sometimes, but they were people who probably view themselves as artists as well. So I just kind of love highlighting that connection, and I think it's something that we should definitely look further into, as this kind of art form evolves.
Yeah, it's one of those things, everyone has a camera in their pocket. Everyone is making more photographs than ever, and so we're seeing more perspective of history than we have ever been able to comprehend before, and I think it's a really beautiful moment.
Thank you so much. I really love that, just talking about that. I think that's pretty amazing. Now, how was your experience being a part of this exhibit? And, how do you feel it's helped you grow as an artist?
Yeah, it's been so incredible in the sense that as an artist too, I always try to have archives and community at the center of my work. And that's not always an opportunity that you get, which is why it's been such a blessing to be able to work with them. Foco is really because they had this rich archive, and they're like, as an artist, like, come to it, bring your ideas, your thoughts, and what you want to do with it. I think I've had opportunities in the past to work with other institutions, and it's been incredible, but it's kind of rare to have the opportunity to bring just like your own background and thoughts to a project. So it's been incredible in that sense, and it was so exciting to be able to interview 3 women of 3 different backgrounds that live in 3 different places in New York and have really been lifelong New Yorkers, and just hear the way that they were connecting to the work that was in the archive, what it meant to them. It was so incredible to see something. The way we started the interviews was there were 15 images that they got to look at and really select the ones that spoke to them or stirred an emotion or stirred a feeling. And it was so cool to even just see the overlap in the images that were selected, because I asked each person to select 3. And there was clear overlap in the ones that they were interested in talking about, and the way that they naturally started talking about their lives and their own lived experiences. And it's so beautiful to see, like, these 3 women who have never met each other have all these ties and connections in ways that you might not ever anticipate, or they might not ever know if they cross each other on the street, right? And I think that's what's so powerful to me about art, about stories, about also like our humanity and our human connection, is how much more sometimes we have in common with the person next to us than we might even know. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to have been able to dig into the archive in that way.
That's amazing. Now, I want people to kind of, experience this a little bit more. So where can people go to learn more about Nueva Luz?
Yeah, so you can find us on our website in foco.org. All of our exhibitions are replicated virtually there. You can purchase our magazine, and all 77 issues are available for free in PDF format.
All right. Well, once again, I just want to thank you guys so much for joining us. And I feel like even for me, I got to kind of think about art in a different way that I haven't thought of before, because I do kind of separate the two, but they are so closely connected when we talk about history and perspectives, and art. So once again, I want to thank you both so much for joining us and having this discussion.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Thank you.
Nueva Luz Open to Interpretation exhibit will be on display from now until September 4th at Wallworks, New York, located at 15 Canal Place in the Bronx. Don't go away. We'll be back with more Open after this.